I said Kelly makes it easy she keeps your attention.
Kelly does. Kelly does. Kelly is a trusted expert in community association risk and protection. It is my honor to welcome Kelly Whitaker with FCA Insurance. She is someone who lives and breathes the world of community association insurance. And if you've seen her live, she makes it interesting. And you'll see today she makes it digestible and fun, like we always try to do here as well. She brings more than 25 years of hands-on experience, and you wouldn't be able to tell that if you looked at her. Beginning in her insurance career in 1997 and earning her Florida 220 and 215 licenses in 2005. She is a Florida native and a graduate of Cumberland University. Kelly has built an impressive track record across the insurance landscape, serving as an operations manager, a commercial lines department manager, and a vice president before joining Star with Hig in 2017, which is now known as FCA Insurance, and we love FCA Insurance. Kelly is not only an insurance professional, she's an active educator and advocate for the communities that she serves. She sits on the board of the Volusia Community Association of Advisors, the BCAA, helping to provide vital education to CAMs, board members, and maintenance personnel. She also has participated in the CAI's Congressional Advocacy Summit, lending her expertise to important conversations affecting Florida associations. With her deep operational background, decades of field experience, and commitment to elevating community association knowledge, Kelly brings a grounded, practical, and highly informed perspective to today's webinar Wednesday, and we're so happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You guys can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I appreciate that introduction. It's always nice to hear you put all that into a lovely format there to introduce each of us presenters. I'm going to try to keep it slow and a little bit calm and not get too excited, because what we're talking about today is pretty much the most important thing that your insurance professional does for you. It's the main purpose and why you reach out to them. And it is a very overwhelming process that I'm going to explain to you today. I'm going to try not to cry and go into a therapy session, as we're in the thick of it right now with most of our renewals coming up in the next few months. So if I start to tear up or look like I need to hyperventilate, just stay with me and I'll work my way through it. But I'm going to explain to you what the agents go through and why it's important to make a good selection with the agents that you work with on your community associations. So to give you an overview of the Florida insurance marketplace, it is a very complex state for insurance. Not that other states don't have their own set of issues, like California with the wildfires, but we do have a very complex marketplace. And if you've been a CAM for the past 10 years, you've probably noticed kind of you're riding a wave with insurance premiums and insurance crisis. It comes and goes. And if you go back about 10 years to 2016, we had some hurricanes in 2016, 2017, and it didn't cause too much heartache. The damage was fairly minimal, and it didn't really cause carriers to panic and increase their premiums. So it wasn't too bad. But then we kind of had a string of things that happened, from COVID to a Texas ice storm to carriers going out of business to a South Florida condo collapse to inflation that just led to a very hardening of the market and a very immediate increase to premiums that caught a lot of boards and CAMs off guard. And just when we were kind of getting the hang of that, all of a sudden we had a drastic improvement to the marketplace. So for the past year and a half, you've probably noticed that your premiums that for your boards are coming in better and even improved terms. So what's led to that is some legislative changes that have happened to make it a more attractive state for insurance carriers to do business in, and to believe that they can be profitable and not have to spend so much money in lawsuits. We've had more carriers coming to the state, not just for personal lines insurance, but also for commercial lines insurance, which is what insures condo associations and HOAs. So when you have more carriers coming in, that is a great thing. Those new carriers typically want to reduce their risk as much as possible and write a very small niche of specific types of condos, which maybe that doesn't help the condos that you represent, but if there's new carriers writing some of the condos, that means that the other carriers that are writing the more complex and higher risk condos have more capacity, meaning that they can write more of a dollar value and more condos. So higher value condos and more condos, which is an improvement to competition. So you've got more carriers creating more competition, which drives the rates down. Another good sign of improvement to the marketplace is that Citizens has gone from being the largest insurer. That is not the purpose of Citizens. They are not meant to carry the bulk of insurance policies in Florida. But when the market hardened and there was that crisis, they rose to writing over 1.4 million policies. And now they've been able to depopulate quite a bit, and they're now under 400,000 policies for their policy count. So that's another good improvement. That means that there's been carriers to come in and take that burden off of Citizens, which is a burden off of the taxpayers, because the taxpayers are really who back Citizens. So I'm going to explain to you today what the role is of the insurance agent, what they do, and how they, what we call market your renewal, and what that process looks like, how long it takes, and what you can do to make the best of that process for the agent and get the best deals for your boards. So an insurance agent in Florida, what I am, it's called an insurance agent. We represent multiple carriers. We don't necessarily write the insurance ourselves. We reach out to the markets to get quotes for your association. Other states might refer to us as brokers, but in Florida, we're called agents. And what we do is work with the association and discuss with them what their needs are. And then we are the expert that goes out to the market to put together a program. We don't just take an order from the association. That's not our job. We don't just say, okay, you want this type of insurance, we'll go get it for you. It's our job as the expert to know what type of insurance is available for associations, get the best options for you, and present those options to you, the CAM, and the board, for the board to make that selection. What we do to communicate the value of an association to the carriers is really just research, gather a lot of information, and present your building almost like we're a realtor selling a building to a home buyer or a property buyer. So we want to make sure that the carriers that we're going to get the best view and the best information for your association, so it is an ideal property for them to want to write, because they're getting inundated with quote requests. So we want to make sure that when they're picking out which ones they want to write, that ours looks the best, so that they pick ours out of that stack. And it helps to have a strong relationship with the carriers and with the brokers that get us access to those carriers. If you work with an agent that specializes in community associations, then they're going to work with those carriers and brokers that do the same thing and develop a relationship, so that when the carrier is talking to the agent, they know that this agent knows what they're talking about. They're familiar with what the carrier's guidelines are, and they can easily work on creating a profitable deal for the association and for the carrier. I think a big misconception about an independent agent is that if you go to different agents, that you're going to get access to different carriers. For the most part, all the agents have access to the same carriers. We're all doing the same job. We're almost like a personal shopper for you, or a consultant. So we go out to the market, we pull in all the different quotes from the different carriers and give the CAM or the board what those options are. And we don't go online and just run a quote ourselves. People a lot of times think if they just give us a call, we can go online and run a quote and they'll have it by the end of the day. And unfortunately, that's not how it works. General liability and property insurance, especially for associations, is a time-consuming process, and it's not something that you can usually get very quickly. Going back to the research that's done so that property can be marketed, you have to go in and get a lot of details on each property. Now, HOAs are going to be a little bit different because they don't have the common area property like a condo building does, but they might have clubhouses and sporting courts and other property that they do own and that they do choose to insure. So it's going to be, for the large part, the same thing with that type of property. Condos do have to get a replacement cost appraisal every 36 months, according to the state statute. So what that means is that the condo association themselves, or the CAM on their behalf, goes out to a vendor that provides that report to them. And then that report is provided to the insurance agent so that the carriers know what the cost would be to completely replace that building in the event of a total loss. There's many vendors out there that do those type of inspections. That is what their job is to go out and value a building. There's specific software that those vendors use. They put in all the details of the building for it to generate what that replacement cost would be. That's part of where we get our information. We also have to do research online with the different cities and counties. So you're going to have to get things like the age of the building, the type of construction. Is it frame construction? Is it fire resistive? What type of roof deck does it have? A big important thing to get for the carrier is any building updates. Number one, obviously, is going to be the roof. When is the last time the roof was completely torn off and a new roof covering put down? It's important when you have a construction project going on like that you are documenting and keeping in your file the contract, the finalized permits, the certificates of insurance for the contractors, because given whatever the market might be, carriers might require that documentation in order to count that update for you. And you can provide that to the agent so that they know for sure this is when that update was done. Other updates that are important to know about are plumbing updates, electrical updates, and updates to the heating and the air system, whether it's a cooling tower or if there's individual units on top of a building, whatever that might be. If it's a clubhouse, it's going to be the same thing. You're going to want to be able to tell the agent when the roof was done, if there's been a new electrical panel that was done. The kind of detail is very important in a renewal submission for an association. Another thing that is important are going to be if you have concrete restoration jobs that have been completed, that are being completed. That information is very critical to get to the agent as well. And if you have incomplete data that is being submitted, like if a roof year is left off and your building was built in 1973, the carrier is going to only be able to assume that it's the original roof. And that's going to have a very different marker for what the rates are going to be, or if your association is even eligible for a carrier based on that roof year. So it can have a big impact on what markets you can get quotes from and the rates that you're going to end up getting for your association. Another big factor when it comes to quotes, whether it's property insurance or liability insurance, is going to be the losses that your associations have incurred. So you've got, again, two main types of losses, property and liability, and they can both have a large impact. In theory, the carriers are not supposed to count the catastrophic wind claims against an association, but they are going to be looking at loss runs to see what the value is that was paid out on a claim, if a claim is still open, and they're going to want to know why a claim is still open, and they're going to especially want to know, have all the repairs been completed? To get that claims history, an agent is going to ask for your loss runs if they're a new agent to your association. If they're the current agent, then they go and they get the loss runs on their own on your behalf, and they use that in their marketing submission. But what a loss run does is it says what the claims history has been for an association for either the past 3 to 5 years. Different carriers go back different number of years, but it's usually 3 or 5. The loss runs will include information like the date of loss, who the claimant was, whether it's the association on a property claim or if there was a slip and fall, who that claimant was, if it's open or closed, if it's been paid, what the paid amount was, if it hasn't been paid yet, what the reserves are. And what the reserves are is like a bucket of money that the carrier has, quote unquote, set aside for that particular claim, what they expect that it could possibly go out to, and what expenses the carrier has incurred. Even if a carrier doesn't pay out on a claim, they still have costs that they incur for their adjuster to evaluate the claim, for a field inspector to go out, if there's an attorney involved. So the loss runs also show what those expenses were. We will hear a lot of times, well, we haven't had any losses, so you don't need my loss runs. And unfortunately, that's not true. You're always going to need loss runs, whether it's when you're getting a quote or when you go to bind a policy. But the loss runs will also validate to a carrier that there have not been any losses on a property. So that's just as important to be able to show and document as it is for losses that have occurred. The carriers are going to look for large, severe losses as well as loss frequency. On the property side, if they see that over the past 5 years, there's been multiple water leak claims, that's going to be a concern to them. And they're going to want us to be able to give a story, a narrative of what occurred in that claim, what caused the slip and fall, and what measures the CAM or the association has taken to prevent further losses from happening. Sometimes it's a silly issue where there's nothing the association could have done, whether it's, somebody was overindulging and came in and just stumbled on themselves. But if you have camera footage you're able to catch that on camera, that's going to be a huge benefit to the association. So having cameras on site, and that's going to be surveillance cameras, we're not going to say security cameras, but having cameras on site is a big deterrent from people even filing claims, because they know that you're going to have footage. But two, for you to be able to defend the association, to show what actually happened, or if even an event didn't even occur. So just a side note on the claims part of it, it's important if you do have cameras that you're storing that footage for longer than 30 days and longer than 60 days even, because a lot of the litigious people that use trip and falls as a way to earn an income, they've learned that if they wait to file a claim until after that 30 or 60 days, the footage is gone. And so there's nothing that the association can do to defend themselves in that incident. So that's a big benefit that condo associations can have. And even some HOAs are installing surveillance cameras to be able to catch similar activity, and be able to go to a carrier and say, hey, we haven't had any activity, but we do have cameras to deter that type of thing. So that's something else that your agent can use to present to a carrier, either liability or property, to show that the associations are proactive in trying to prevent losses. An insurance inspection can be done before a renewal. They can also be done after a renewal. And then also when you're getting an appraisal done, there's an inspection portion to the appraisal. The vendor will come out, they will inspect the property, they will take photos to include in the appraisal, and they will gather information while on site. It is a wonderful tool to be able to show the carriers, look how clean this property is. Look, there's not trash compiled in areas where it shouldn't be, such as machinery rooms or electrical rooms. You don't want to have a bunch of trash in those areas. It's also good to show the condition of the building so that the carrier doesn't think that they're going to, go out after they write something and find issues that need to be addressed. They can see from the photos that this building has great maintenance. It's going to be a low risk for us and something that they are excited about offering a quote on. So those are things that as a CAM, you want to make sure that you have on file: the appraisal, a wind mitigation, any type of inspection that you've had. If it's a fire safety system inspection, those can be very important as well. And current photos are also very important for an agent to have, to be able to present that to the carrier. So when the agent goes to market the submission, and I'm smiling because I'm going to try not to get exhausted as I discuss this process, because again, this is our prime time right now that we are going through getting renewal submissions out to market. And it is an exhaustive process for the agents and for the carriers. So when an underwriting submission is going to include all of that information that we've just talked about: loss runs, appraisals, wind mitigations, fire inspection, sprinkler inspection reports. It's going to have what we call a statement or schedule of values, which is an elaborate spreadsheet that lists all of the property that your association has and the details of that property. It's going to include information that your agent has obtained from you, the CAM. If you get calls from your agent and you're like, every year they're asking me something different, I don't know why they don't know this information. It's because the market has continuously changed and there's been new issues for them the carriers to overcome, like the South Florida condo collapse, that have caused them to ask questions now that they never asked before. Milestone inspections is another big thing that we're having to have on file and sometimes provide to carriers. Financial statements. Some carriers want to see a balance sheet and an income statement to be able to know that the association is solvent and able to repair property and cover a deductible in the event of a catastrophic loss. So agents have to gather all of this information and put it together in a package to market out to the carriers. Also, permits, to go online and pull permits or get permit information to make sure that we've got the most up-to-date building information. Unfortunately, the online databases for permits are not as complete as you would think, especially given the fact that you have to go through so much work to get a permit. You would think that they would be easily accessible online and a record clearly kept, but that's not always the case. So it is very important for the CAMs to keep a permit file for the association, to be able to go back and be able to show the agent a finalized permit to show, look, the roof was inspected, it was completed, the city signed off on it, and here's a copy of that finalized inspection. That way we can prove to the carrier that not only was the roof updated, but it was inspected and it's been completed. We have two different types of markets, well, actually three in the state of Florida. You've got the residual market citizens property insurance, which we already talked about. That's the program that is run by the state and backed by taxpayers. And then you have a standard or admitted market. And then the other carriers are going to be in excess and surplus lines, otherwise known as non-admitted. An admitted market is going to be one that is licensed to do business in the state of Florida. They're subject to Florida's state guidelines. They have to get their rates filed with the state of Florida and approved by the state, and they are backed by the Florida Insurance Guarantee Association. So in the event that a carrier becomes insolvent, is unable to pay claims, then the state's fund would come in and be able to reimburse premiums to insureds or pay those claims up to a certain dollar limit. Because of the volatility of property in Florida, mostly because of hurricanes, most carriers historically that write commercial property, which again is what an HOA's property or a condo's property is going to be considered, are non-admitted, otherwise known as surplus lines carriers. They're still good carriers. They're carriers that are writing business in other parts of the country, but they're not specifically writing only in Florida. They're carriers that have spread out their risk throughout the country in order to be able to take on a riskier property, like something that has hurricanes happening frequently. Those markets, again, are still good markets. They still have certain ratings. You can get their rating from the carrier, whether it's an AM Best rated carrier or a Demotech rated carrier. There are some other smaller rating faculties that will rate insurance carriers, but they're not backed by that guarantee fund, but they do have extensive reinsurance treaties. So that's something that your agent will discuss with you when they get the different options for your renewal, to tell you, hey, this one's from an admitted carrier. This is really what you should be looking at because it does have some financial guarantee along with it. That's something that you want to take into consideration when you're looking at your different renewal options. And again, that's why you want your agent to make sure that they're putting their best foot forward, because those carriers that are admitted carriers, they're going to be writing the cream of the crop, the lower risk properties. So you want to make sure that the agent is able to present it in a manner that shows, hey, this is a great building. It's built in the last 20 years. It's well maintained. We have, maintenance logs that are done. There's a long time on-site maintenance person, a long time CAM, the board is involved, the owners are involved, all kinds of information that you can present to them. They've got their milestone done. If it's, built in a time period where they need the milestone done, they have their structural integrity reserve study done. They've got great financials. You want to be able to present the best story for the carriers to view when they're looking at writing those properties. The renewal timelines and communication. So when should a renewal begin? It literally feels like by the time that we have bound your policies and sent you the policies and put it all to bed, it seems like we just turn around and it's time to start all over again. We start our process 5 months before the renewal date to start gathering our information and building our submissions, because the carriers will accept those submissions from us at either 120 days, 90 days, 60 days. Different carriers have different deadlines of when you're able to submit to them. As a CAM, you want to make sure that you are aware of when the appraisal is due, because again, it's every 36 months. So if you have an appraisal that's going to be due before the renewal, you want to make sure that you're getting it done in a timely manner so that agent can get the appraisal in a time to get it to the carriers and get those quotes based on the current information. Wind mitigations are also something we as an agent for the association don't necessarily need a new wind mit unless roof updates have been done. However, the individual carriers want it done every 5 years. The form says on there that it's good for 5 years. As a side note to all you CAMs that get wind mitigation forms, the state just released a brand new version that is going to be effective April. So if you're getting a wind mit and you're receiving it after April 1st, make sure that it's on that new version. If anybody wants a copy of the new version, it's pretty easy to find online. So those are some of the deadlines that you want to make sure that you're aware of as a CAM to get that information to the agent. And managing the expectations with the board can be a little bit tricky, because I know that they are hearing all kinds of information, whether it's they're getting calls from multiple agents or they're hearing information online, whatever it might be. You want to make sure that you're letting the agent get in front of the board, whether it's via email, a phone call, an in-person meeting, and letting the agent explain that process to the board or even to owners. We talk to owners all the time. It's a service that we provide to make sure that we can relay the information and try to avoid the game of telephone where information can be misconstrued going from person to person that's not an insurance person. So getting the agent and the board to communicate can be a big, huge help to avoid any misunderstandings or not realizing when they're going to hear about the renewal. A lot of boards don't even know when their renewal is going to be. So having that on your calendar, hey, our renewal is June 1st. We need to make sure that the board is aware of that and make sure that we can set up a time with the agent. Different carriers are getting quotes out at different time frames. Some carriers are able to get quotes out pretty early. If you're with specific carriers, that have come into the state or citizens, you might be getting your renewal directly from that carrier, but more than likely your agent is still working with other carriers. So when you get that information, you can reach out to the agent and just touch base and say, hey, I got this. I just want to make sure, if we're waiting on any other quotes to come in before I pay this. And you can even schedule a meeting, even if the agent doesn't have your renewal quotes yet, but hey, it renews June 1st. The board's going to want to make a decision by May 15th. Let's go ahead and get something penciled in so that we have a potential meeting with the agent and we know when we're going to be making this decision. Sometimes even if we don't have the final renewal quote, we might have some indications, or we might have quotes from different carriers that we can go ahead and present to the association to say, this is what worst case scenario is going to look like, but we're still working with other carriers to see if anything better is available in the marketplace. So again, it's very important to provide accurate information to the agent in a timely manner. If the agent reaches out and says, hey, I need current financials, or hey, your appraisal's due in 30 days, please send it to me, when you get a copy, make sure that you are getting that information over to the agent as soon as possible so that they can get it to the carriers that are asking for it. After a policy is placed and the carriers go out and to inspect, if they find something needs to be done, whether an elevator certificate needs to be updated, or they found that there's grills on the patio, there's cracks in the sidewalk that they want repaired, whatever it might be, it is important to get those rectified and get documentation over to the agent as soon as possible. Some carriers will give you 30 days. Some carriers will say it needs to be done before the next renewal. So it's important to get that done as soon as possible and get the documentation over to the agent so that they can avoid a non-renewal or make sure that they get the best quote possible because that work has been done and that it's not something that comes up again at the following inspection. You also want to make sure you're working with an agent that can help you with the budget. Budget time frame is usually in October, but some associations have it different parts of the year. Reach out to your agent for an appropriate forecast of where they think the premiums might be when it comes time for your actual renewal. As an agent, it can be difficult because different boards want to hear different things. Some boards want to only budget for what they absolutely have to budget for. Other boards want to have some room so they don't have to go out and do a revision. I understand that that's a very overwhelming process to have to revise a budget after it's been passed. So you want to have that discussion with the agent of where the board kind of is with that. Would they rather have some extra room? And you can say, hey, they'd rather give themselves like a 10% buffer. So where do you think we need to be? We've had to tell a lot of people, hey, we completely expect a reduction, but your renewal doesn't come up for 6 more months, and that's past hurricane season, so things could change, but this is where we see it right now. Please feel free to check back with us, in a few months after the first of the year, whatever it might be, and kind of trying to forecast where you think the market might be going in the coming years. Obviously, with hurricanes, even with the economy, there's a lot of unforeseen that we can't predict, but you can sometimes go into a plan of what you think you need to budget for this year, the next year, the following year, especially when you take into account if a new appraisal is due. Appraisals have been coming in again with some significant increases. So if you know that in 2 years you're going to need a new appraisal, you can kind of account for, we're going to have a little bit of an increase at that time because of a potential increase in values. Diane, did you want to do questions now, or do you want to go through the exam questions?
Let me just turn on my camera here. Okay. Well, let's see. Lindsay, my camera is having issues. Can you take over for a second?
Sure. So we can go ahead and go through your questions first. I do see that there is one question in the Q&A, but this might spark some additional ones.
Okay, sure. So we're going to go through the exam questions, the most exciting part of today's presentation, where everybody gets to test how exciting I was to listen to for the past few minutes. So question 1, What is the primary purpose of marketing a property during the insurance renewal? Is it A, to reduce claims immediately, B, to position the association favorably to carriers, C, to eliminate inspections, or D, to delay underwriting? Are you having them put all their answers in?
Is the chat open?
Let me open it.
Hang on, guys.
Yeah.
We're opening the chat.
It's open. It's open.
Okay, there you go.
Okay,
Put your
okay,
answers in
okay.
the chat, not in the Q&A.
Okay, good, good. So I see a lot of B's, a lot of B's. So yes, to position the association favorably to carriers is going to be the primary purpose. Question 2, which factor is most important to underwriters when reviewing a community? So most important, board meeting attendance, accurate risk and property data, marketing materials, or resident demographics. And again, there could be there's a lot of them that are important, but we're looking for the most important. Again, I see a lot of B's, so you guys are correct. Accurate risk and property data is going to be the correct answer. Believe it or not, board meeting attendance can help if you've got great board meeting attendance. The marketing materials that we have, and even resident demographics, meaning are there owner-occupied units? Are there a lot of short-term rental units? That kind of information can also help with an association's renewal. When should renewal preparation ideally begin? So this one's a little bit tricky because it's not exactly when we begin it, but it's got 30 days before expiration, 60 days, 90 to 120 days, or after policy expiration. Great, so I see a lot of C's in there. So absolutely, 90 to 120 days is the mark when most carriers are going to accept a renewal submission in order to quote for your association. So good job. Question 4, what are loss runs? Are they maintenance schedules, claims history reports, inspection summaries, or financial audits? Everybody listen, that's so great. Yes, loss runs are going to be a claims history report. And again, even if you've had no claims, it's still an important document to get because that's going to verify, look, we've had no claims. That's how awesome we are. Not that you're not awesome if you don't have claims, or if you have claims, because most do. Why is a claims narrative important? A, it replaces loss runs. B, it explains context and corrective actions. C, it lowers deductibles. Or D, it removes exclusions. Good job, everybody. B, it explains context and corrective actions. And again, that's going to be like, look, this person tripped and fell, but they were walking in a broken flip-flop and they had a beer in their hand, and whatever the story is, we've got proof of it, and we've told people no more drinks in the lobby. Question 6, how do photos help during renewal? A, they increase marketing appeal. B, they verify property condition and maintenance. C, they replace inspections. Or D, they reduce premiums automatically. Good job, everybody. B, they verify property condition and maintenance. They do not replace inspections, and they don't automatically reduce premiums, but they can definitely help. Question 7, who is responsible for submitting renewal information to carriers? The board president, the CAM, the insurance agent, or the insurance carrier? Yes, that is my job. The insurance agent is responsible for submitting the renewal information to carriers. The CAM should be submitting information to the agent or the board president, depending on the property. Question number 8, what happens when renewal data is incomplete or late? Does it A, lower premiums, B, create automatic renewal approval, C, carrier declinations or higher pricing, or D, extend coverage? Yes, that's going to be C. That can create a carrier declination or higher pricing if you don't have complete information or you don't get it in time. Question 9, which action best supports renewal success? Is it going to be A, ignoring inspection findings, B, providing timely documentation, C, waiting for carrier requests, or D, changing agents annually. I hope I see no D's. I don't want to see any D's on there.
That chat's
Okay.
lit up. I love it.
So that's correct. B, providing timely documentation is the best support for renewal success. You definitely don't want to ignore inspection findings, although it seems like maybe if I just ignore it, it'll go away. Unfortunately, that doesn't typically happen. Question 10, what role do CAMs play in the renewal process? A, no involvement. B, claims adjusting. C, coordinating information and communication. Or D, setting carrier pricing. All right, everybody got that right. C, coordinating information and communication is the CAM's role to play. And I know that that can be overwhelming because usually renewals don't happen when nothing else is going on. So it can be a lot for the CAM to go through, but hopefully you've got a great agent who can make that process as easy as possible for you. All right. And that's what I have.
And
Let's
that's
see
what
if
I
anybody
have.
has a question for me.
There
Lynn,
is.
Lindsay, if you want to think about some questions that maybe she has missed, but
Absolutely.
I think this is possibly just, unique to the association. Why has our liability gone up 17%? Did you already answer that?
I did not answer that specifically. So without knowing about your specific property, whether or not you've had some added exposure or if you've had some claims that have occurred, it could be that the carrier you were with is no longer writing in the state of Florida, so you had to go to a different carrier. But while property rates are coming down drastically in Florida for associations, unfortunately, liability rates are not doing the same because there is still a lot of litigation in the state, a lot of people suing their associations. And so those costs have continued to increase. We are seeing some improvement in that area, but your general liability and your umbrella and your D&O policies are not going to be seeing the same drastic premium reductions like the property is. But feel free to call me and I'll be glad to look at it for you.
Up. I just got a text from Diane that she got kicked off the
Oh.
Zoom. So we'll wait for her to come back now in a few minutes. So it's over to me. I do know, I guess, with a lot of, like you said, there are some premiums that are coming in a little bit lower. I know I had that experience with a property recently where it was a little less than last year. I do know also on a personal side, a lot of owners were having a hard time, like a lot of, I guess, insurance agencies, not agencies, but were denying renewals for people. A lot of it was citizens.
Mhm.
What are some of the things, and sorry if you covered this, I didn't hear it. But what are some things that properties can expect to see insurance companies asking them to upgrade or replace earlier than maybe they have in the past? I know, like with condo individual units, there was a change there a few years ago where like they wanted the hot water heater to be less than 5 years old. They were making people get inspections before they would renew their policy. And there were some things that, like, your hot water heater might be good for 10 years, but that was no longer acceptable to the
Right.
insurance company. Is there anything on like a condominium or an HOA that CAMs need to think about looking at doing earlier because they're coming up and requiring that?
I think that it's definitely a question that they need to have with their agent because roofs are still going to be a hot ticket item, but it's not as severe as it was a few years ago. So there is some more leniency than there was, but it's still going to be something that you really want to make sure that you're discussing the roof. A lot of people think, well, I've got a 30-year warranty on my roof, so it should be good. The warranty doesn't come into play with insurance. It's kind of the same as if you were driving your car and got into a car accident. If you have a new car that's under warranty, that doesn't come into play when you get into a car accident. So it's a completely different area. But the roofs for sure, water heaters, if as a condo association you have some type of leak detection system, I know that there's vendors out there that do building-wide leak detection. That's going to be a huge thing to make sure that your agent is aware of, because if a leak can be detected immediately and the water shut off, then that's going to be a huge deal for a carrier, that they know that they're not going to have that onslaught of, 7 stories going down with a water leak. So that's something, a very big improvement you can make. It's a costly improvement, but there are vendors out there that do the water leak detection. There's water heaters now that have Wi-Fi. So you could get a water heater that sends a message to your phone if it's malfunctioning or if there's a leak, so that even if you're out of state, that somebody needs to come look at the water heater.
Okay,
Something
great.
too that I probably should have explained a little bit more in detail, and we get the question all the time: why am I only talking to one agent? Should I talk to multiple agents? And I did touch a little on that, where, we're your personal shopper. I know there's, for instance, there's consultants out there that will get associations the best Wi-Fi or internet deal. They'll go out to the different markets that offer that service, and they come in with their packet and say, here's the best options for you to choose from. That's the same thing that your insurance agent does. We go out to the carriers, we gather the options and present those to the association to choose from. Some of the associations, condos specifically, they might take like 5 different carriers to insure the entire building. So if you've given one agent access to 5 carriers and another access to 5 different carriers, then those agents can only get options from those specific carriers. Whereas if you deal with one agent who has access to all of the carriers, they can use those to better negotiate the best deal for the association, or create multiple options for the association to choose from. So before you get to the renewal process, before that 5-month mark, interview the agents and decide which agent is the best fit for your association.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think that a lot of times people are confused on that. They think that, they can go to this agent and that agent, and it doesn't really work like that.
Yeah.
Someone asked, can you go over the hot water heater info you provided? I think that's referring to what I said. A lot of individual condominium owners were having a hard time getting their insurance policy to renew a few years back. And they were requiring individual unit owners. The insurance agency was sending out inspectors to look at their units. And one of the things that they were looking at were hot water heaters. And they had to be under like 5 years of age for them to renew the policy. And I think that that was because there were a lot of hot water heaters the bottoms were rusting out, because people were just keeping them for as long as they possibly could. And the bottoms were rusting out, and then they would start leaking, and they cause damage on all the units below them. And then the insurance agent that's covering your unit where you had the hot water heater leak is responsible for the damage in all the below units. So that's just something that I was using as an example when asking Kelly about, anything that you might need to look at, which she said the roof as a complex for renewals. So that's for an individual owner, not for an association, but it is something to think about. If you have unit owners, or if you are a unit owner, those are things that your insurance company is wanting to make sure that you're taking care of your unit and doing the necessary repairs in your unit that, if not done, could affect other units below you, because then they're responsible.
Mhm.
There is another question for you. You mentioned insurance carriers may do inspections on properties. Are agents proactive and do inspections every few months with the boards to get ahead of an issue for the association, similar to doing preventative maintenance? I mean, I'll speak as a CAM. Your CAM should be the one doing that with you. I don't think your insurance agents are going to come walk your property every couple of months. There are certain things that you do have to do, which Kelly can kind of talk about, whereas a lot of insurance companies will want wind mitigations. You have to do your insurance appraisals. Kelly, you want to maybe say a few things about that?
Yeah, as far as the agent coming out every few months, unless hopefully you don't have any issues that need that much attention. If you do have an ongoing issue, then obviously your agent, if you need to talk to them about coming out, hopefully they will, but we go out to try to do a pre-inspection before the carrier comes out, and we go out with the carrier when they come out to inspect, to make sure that that process goes smoothly and that there's not some type of, incidental requirement that then causes extra work for the CAM and for the agent and for the board. But it too, like you said, the CAM should be doing that. And even the board too, like the board might have a committee that they create to walk the property and make sure that there's, nothing going awry. We had one building that unfortunately nobody knew that the balconies were cracking. Like they didn't need a milestone inspection because of the number of stories and the year of the building. But there was severe cracking on the balconies. So that's something that you want to make sure that you are aware of and that you can take care of it before the carrier comes out and says, hey, there's this huge issue. And if it's not fixed within 30 days, we're going to get off the policy, because that type of issue usually can't be fixed within 30 days.
Right.
And going back to the inspections from individual carriers, something we're seeing too, my own carrier made me do my own inspection, where there's like an app that you have to complete questions on, and they ask you to take photos of like your hot water heater, or even under your sinks. They want to take pictures of the plumbing under the sinks. If you do your own adjustments under there, make sure that you're only hand tightening things that are meant to be hand tightened only. And you're not using a tool on it, because if there's a claim, there's a leak, and they see that there were tools used on it when it should only be hand tightened, that can be an issue too.
Good to know. Good to know. All right. Any more questions? One last chance to get your question